So in this particular video we're going to be looking at Anglo-Saxon Kings and Anglo-Saxon Earls. The king was obviously the most powerful person in the land. No one has power over the king, but he did need help with his rule. He couldn't do it alone. So what he did was he granted out power. He divvied up the land to earls around the country, and he took advice from their council, and they were known as the Witan. So when we're looking at the king, he has the power over lawmaking, so only he can make the laws and everyone has to obey them. It's as simple as that. Land ownership was important. The king could grant land to loyal followers, and he could also, on the flip side of that coin, take it away if he wanted to punish someone. The third are an army that the king can raise at any time if he needs anyone to fight for him. And in terms of religion, the king was chosen by God to lead his people, kind of like this idea of a divine right. You know, the power of the king is bestowed upon him by God. As ever with these types of things, taxation is important. The king decided who and how much tax was paid, and he was also in control of minting and distributing money. So the Witan was a council that we just sort of mentioned at the start there, and they were a council that advised the king on decisions, but it was not a limitation on the king's power. So the king decided who was appointed to the Witan, the king decided what the Witan should advise him on, and the king did not have to follow the Witan's advice if he didn't wish to do so. So as I've mentioned, the earls were a really important group of people that helped the king govern and control the land and control certain areas on the king's behalf. So they were granted some of the king's powers to do this. So what could they do? They could collect taxes. So they from their earldom, their area of land that they controlled, they could collect taxes, and they kept a third of the taxes for governing and protecting the earldom. They oversaw laws and law and order, in their earldom. They would, if there was crimes, they would judge cases, they would decide on punishments, and they could even decide on innocence or guilt. And also, they would be in charge of the military in those earldoms. So they were in effect the king's generals, leading their Thegns, who were their lords, into battle, and also would be involved in fighting the king's enemies. Large earldoms meant earls could become very powerful indeed in Anglo-Saxon England. So Thegns, as I've just mentioned, they were local lords, so they were below earls in the hierarchy of the society, but they were still quite powerful people, and they could complain to the king about the earls, who, if they felt the earl wasn't governing the earldom well. This happened with Tostig, as Harold's brother, in 1065, where the Witan was also involved in deciding what should happen. So the king at the time period we're looking at was Edward the Confessor, and I'm just going to go through some of the good points and bad points, if you like, about Edward's reign. As a religious leader, people believed that God was guiding him. So again, we're talking about an incredibly religious time. The king, everyone believed, was chosen by God, and it felt that the decisions he made were given by God. He was a respected lawmaker, and as such, people sort of were happy with the way he dealt with things and the laws that were created. And he sort of tried to consolidate his power by marrying Edith, the daughter of the rich and powerful Earl Godwin, who was, potentially a threat to Edward. So by marrying Edith, he could kind of neutralise that. Things weren't always great for him. He'd been exiled to Normandy in France for most of his life. So the support from the English and England wasn't as great as he would have liked. He didn't have any children to succeed him, which we know is a huge problem for monarchy at this time, and causes a problem in who was going to be his successor. And as I discussed just moments ago about Edith, he struggled to keep control of Earl Godwin, who was a really powerful earl at that time. So just a little short video there about the Anglo-Saxon kings and earls. I hope you found that useful. There'll be some more Anglo-Saxon stuff coming soon. All right, thank you.